They thought it was over for you, tossed you into the abyss, hands wiped clean, convinced the fall would break you, that the cold would claim you, that the wolves would finish what they started. They did not understand the nature of survival. The weak assume exile is the end. That being cast out means being defeated. But for those born to rise, for those who refuse to submit, exile is evolution. It strips away the comforts that weaken, burns off the illusions that blind, forces the kind of growth that only suffering can ignite. And when you return, when you emerge from the wilderness, not broken, but transformed, the same ones who watched your fall will tremble at your rise. The wolves did not devour you. They taught you. The hunger, the discipline, the patience of the hunt, the laws of dominance, of territory, of unapologetic power. The ones who threw you to the wilds expected you to be consumed, but instead, you learned the language of the ruthless. You understood what they never did, that the strongest are not those shielded from hardship, but those who become it. You did not just survive the wolves, you became one of them. And now you return leading the pack. Society has no place for those who do not fit its mold. The world only embraces the predictable, the obedient, the ones who remain within the carefully drawn lines. Step outside those boundaries, refuse to play by the rules, and suddenly you become a threat. And threats are not tolerated. They are discarded, cast out, fed to the elements. But what the world forgets is that exile creates monsters. And some who are thrown away do not return seeking acceptance. They return seeking conquest. Psychologically, betrayal is meant to break the mind. The human brain craves belonging, validation, the safety of the tribe. To be cast out triggers a primal fear. Rejection meant death once. But times have changed. And now, exile is freedom. It severs you from the chains of false belonging, from the illusion that you needed their approval to survive. It forces you to become self-sufficient, to build your own foundation, to craft an identity untethered from those who tried to erase you. And when you come back, you do not return as the person they discarded. You return as the force they cannot control. The weak avoid the wilderness because it is unforgiving. The strong seek it out because it is truthful. There are no lies in the cold, no illusions in the dark, only what is. And in that brutal clarity, you found yourself. While they remained in their golden cages, fattened by comfort, dulled by stagnation, you sharpened. You hunted. You adapted. You became something else entirely. And now, when they look into your eyes, they see the wildness that was never meant to be tamed. The wolf who was never supposed to return. Your rise was never meant to happen. It disrupts the order, shatters the expectations of those who once held power over you. They thought their betrayal was the final chapter, that exile was a closed door. But some do not fade when cast into the dark. Some thrive in it. And when the exile ends, when the return begins, those who once threw you away will be forced to face a terrifying reality. You're no longer the same. And that is the worst thing that could have happened to them. In relationships, in power structures, in every aspect of life, those who manipulate, those who betray, those who discard others with ease, they operate under one assumption: that you will never rise without them, that you will crawl back, diminished, desperate for re-entry, willing to compromise just to belong again. But the ones who truly understand the game do not return begging. They return leading the army that was forged in their absence, the pack that was built in the shadows, the force that will now dictate the rules. Modern society fears those who have walked alone, because once you have survived exile, you are uncontrollable. You no longer fear loss, because you have already lost. You no longer fear pain, because you have already suffered. You no longer seek permission, because you have learned that power is never given, it is taken. And the ones who once stood above you now sense the shift. The balance of power is no longer in their hands, and they know with bone-deep certainty that they cannot undo what you have become. This is what makes your return so devastating. You are no longer playing the game they created. You do not need their acceptance, their validation, their approval. You walk in with the knowledge that you are self-made, sharpened by suffering, forged in the fires of abandonment. You no longer seek a seat at their table. You bring your own. And when you speak, when you command, when you move, the very ones who once sought to destroy you will listen, not out of respect, not out of admiration, but out of fear. Abandonment was supposed to break you. The absence of familiar voices, the sudden cold of isolation, the realization that no one was coming to save you. This was meant to be the moment of collapse. The architects of your downfall expected you to fold under the silence, to wither in solitude, to seek them out, desperate for re-entry. But the mistake was theirs, not yours, because isolation did not weaken you. It sharpened you, forced you into self-reliance, turned your instincts into weapons. Without distraction, without illusion, without the constant noise of the world, you became something else entirely. And now, you return with abilities they never expected you to possess. Most cannot survive solitude. The human mind, conditioned by years of external validation, by the comfort of false belonging, by the illusion of needing others to exist, resists isolation like a body resists poison. The average person seeks noise, company, anything to drown out the weight of their own thoughts. But those who learn to embrace solitude, those who let the silence teach them instead of terrify them, they evolve without the influence of others, without the need to appease, without the burden of expectation. The mind is forced to confront its own undeniable potential. In relationships, this is the greatest weapon you can possess: self-reliance, the ability to exist without needing constant reassurance, the strength to stand without requiring support, the kind of internal stability that no manipulation can penetrate. The ones who abandoned you assumed you would seek them out again, weaker, willing to negotiate, desperate for acceptance. But instead, you spent your exile building something within yourself that now renders them irrelevant. And nothing terrifies people more than realizing they are no longer needed. Psychologically, abandonment is meant to trigger submission. The human brain associates rejection with danger, with being cast out from the tribe, with vulnerability. But once you break through that instinct, once you survive the exile without bending, the wiring shifts. The fear dissolves. And suddenly, you no longer need approval to move forward. Those who once dictated your worth are exposed for what they are, nothing but distractions, illusions that you once believed were essential. Now, they are nothing but ghosts in your rear view. The reason people weaponize abandonment is because it works on most. It plays into the oldest human weakness, the fear of being alone. But the ones who make it through, the ones who learn to thrive in solitude, do not return seeking reconciliation. They return self-sufficient, untamed, immune to the control they once fell victim to. Once you realize that solitude did not kill you, but freed you, the entire game shifts. You no longer seek validation. You no longer care for acceptance. And without those chains, you move through life uncontrollable. Look at those who fear abandonment. Look at how desperately they cling to anyone, to anything, just to avoid the silence. They tolerate disrespect, accept betrayal, lower themselves into the mud just to keep someone near. But you let the loneliness sculpt you into something formidable. You embrace the isolation like a forge, allowing it to strip away everything unnecessary, everything weak, until only the essential remained. And now, those who thought they had power over you stand confused, wondering why their absence did not reduce you to dust. This is where the shift happens. The moment when those who abandoned you realize too late that you have become something beyond their control. The moment when you walk back into the world with a presence that no longer bends, no longer wavers, no longer needs. Because need is where manipulation thrives. And you have transcended need entirely. You are no longer playing by their rules, no longer measuring yourself by their standards, no longer looking to anyone for permission to exist. The greatest revenge is not anger. It is not destruction. It is irrelevance. The moment they see that their presence, or lack of it, has no effect on you. The moment they realize that all their power was borrowed from your former dependence, they crumble. Not because you attacked, not because you sought retribution, but because you proved, without effort, that their importance was nothing more than a trick of perception. And now, they are nothing but spectators to the force you have become. Let them watch as you move forward without a single glance back. Let them sit in the realization that their absence did not destroy you. It rebuilt you into something beyond their reach. This is the part they never saw coming. The part where abandonment was supposed to weaken you, but instead, it forged you into something unshakable. And the ones who once saw themselves as superior, now, they are the ones who feel small in your presence.